Ambassador Zethkar adjusted his ceremonial robes one final time as the human transport vessel approached the orbital station. Through the crystalline viewport, he could see the sleek utilitarian craft, so different from the ornate diplomatic ships of the Galactic Council races. The humans had requested this meeting 3 cycles ago, claiming they were ready to join the greater galactic community. "They're such a young species," murmured High Counselor Vextal beside him, her scales shimmering with amusement. "Barely 2 centuries since their first interstellar flight. What could they possibly offer us?" The assembled delegation of 12 species chuckled in their various ways, chirps, rumbles, and harmonic tones that conveyed shared superiority. The Galactic Council had seen this before. Upstart species eager to join the established order, only to find themselves overwhelmed by the complex web of interstellar politics that had been refined over millennia. The airlock hissed open, and 3 humans stepped through. They wore simple black uniforms with minimal ornamentation, their movements efficient and purposeful. No ceremonial weapons, no flowing robes, no displays of wealth or technological prowess. Even their leader appeared unremarkable, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and calm dark eyes. "I am Director Sarah Chen," the human said, her voice steady and clear. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Zethkar stepped forward, his forearms spread in the traditional gesture of welcome. "I am Ambassador Zethkar of the Threnabi Commonwealth, speaking for the Galactic Council. We are pleased to meet with your delegation." The pause before pleased was intentional, a subtle diplomatic signal that the humans were being granted an audience rather than treated as equals. It was a test, really. Most young species either bristled with offense or groveled in gratitude. The humans did neither. Director Chen simply nodded as if the slight had passed unnoticed. "Shall we begin with the standard introduction protocols?" Zethkar continued. "Perhaps you could share your species' accomplishments, technological capabilities, and what you believe you can contribute to our alliance." "Of course," Chen replied. "But first, I wonder if you might indulge a question from our perspective. In your extensive experience with interstellar relations, what would you say is the most challenging aspect of maintaining a stable galactic confederation?" The assembled delegates exchanged glances. This was unexpected. Young species typically launched into boastful presentations about their achievements, not turned the conversation toward political philosophy. High Counselor Vextal leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. "Resource allocation disputes, certainly. When you have dozens of species with different needs competing for the same systems." "Interesting," Chen nodded. "We've observed that pattern in your recent conflicts with the Outer Rim territories. 7 separate resource wars in the past decade alone." A chill settled over the chamber. The humans weren't supposed to know about those conflicts. They were classified council business. "I imagine," Chen continued conversationally, "that the challenge becomes even more complex when certain council members are secretly supplying weapons to both sides of those conflicts, ensuring they drag on longer than necessary." Admiral Krexthu of the Vorthak Navy stood abruptly, his carapace rattling with agitation. "This is highly inappropriate speculation." "Is it speculation?" Chen asked mildly. She gestured to one of her companions, who produced a small datapad. "Trade records show Vorthak industrial shipments to Sector 7 increased by 340% during the Kepler Rebellion, while simultaneously, Threnabi humanitarian aid included suspiciously military-grade components." The silence stretched uncomfortably. Zethkar felt his primary stomach clench with a growing unease. "How could you possibly have access to—" "We're very good at patterns," Chen interrupted gently. "It's something of a species specialty. For instance, we've noticed that council membership votes follow a remarkably predictable algorithm based on economic leverage rather than the stated criteria of technological and cultural advancement." She looked around the room with those disconcertingly calm eyes. "The Helix Collective has been denied membership for 60 years, despite surpassing most council races in both categories. However, their homeworld lacks rare minerals. The Nethvar were fast-tracked to membership despite barely achieving interstellar flight, but their system contains the largest known deposits of quantum crystals." Vextal's scales had shifted to a defensive coloration. These are serious accusations. They're observations, Chen corrected. We're not here to judge. Every species acts according to its perceived interests. But we wanted you to understand something before we proceed. She paused, and for the first time, her expression hardened slightly. You expected us to arrive as supplicants, hoping to be accepted into your established order. You anticipated we'd be awed by your ancient alliances and complex protocols. You thought you were meeting with fragile diplomats who would be manipulated by political veterans. Chen stepped closer to the assembled delegates, and despite their various species' natural advantages, the Vorthak's armored bulk, the Threnabis, superior reach, the Zephyr's psychic capabilities, they all found themselves leaning back. What arrived instead, she continued, are the descendants of a species that spent millennia perfecting the art of strategic thinking. We didn't develop interstellar flight because we're peaceful explorers. We developed it because we're apex, strategists who recognize that any species confined to a single world is ultimately vulnerable. She gestured to the viewport, where more human ships had quietly taken position around the station during the meeting. We've spent the last 50 years studying every one of your civilizations. We know your economic dependencies, your military capabilities, your political fault lines, and your historical patterns. We've identified the pressure points that could destabilize your entire confederation within a standard galactic year. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. But Chen's expression softened back to diplomatic pleasantness. We're not here as conquerors. We're here as potential partners who want to propose a more efficient arrangement. One based on mutual benefit rather than the current system of managed conflicts and artificial scarcities. She returned to her original position, hands clasped behind her back. So, shall we begin actual negotiations now? I believe you'll find our proposals quite reasonable and profitable for everyone involved. As the stunned silence stretched on, Zethkar realized with crystalline clarity that the balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted fundamentally. The humans hadn't come seeking membership in the existing order. They had come to replace it. And from the careful way they had orchestrated this entire encounter, he suspected they had been planning this moment from the very first day they achieved interstellar flight. The age of human diplomacy had begun.